My therapist helped me decide to leave my marriage and leave my life. 3 weeks later, I found out I'd come back. If that sounds impossible, I get it. I would have said the same thing. Before I tell you how that happened, please like and subscribe. And if you've ever had someone twist your reality until you didn't trust your own mind, I want you in the comments. Because I promise you, you're not alone. And stay with me until the end to hear Julie's commentary on what I went through and why stories like this matter. My name is Claire Walters. I'm 32. I live with my husband James just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, in one of those neighborhoods where the lawns are perfect and the smiles are practiced. From the outside, our life looked finished, like the final version. A nice house, good money, a busy social calendar, a marriage that looked calm. But calm isn't the same as safe, and it definitely isn't the same as honest. I grew up in care, foster homes and group homes. The kind of childhood where you learn to stay useful so you don't get moved again. So when I built a stable life, I clung to it hard. I worked like stability was something I could earn and keep forever. I started a boutique brand strategy agency, then a small e-commerce brand, then a consulting arm for founders who wanted systems. Nothing flashy, just profitable, clean, stable. James had his own lane. Operations, logistics, the kind of work where you keep things moving and don't panic when something breaks. He was steady, predictable, the kind of man you think you can build a forever with. We didn't have kids. We always said we weren't rushing. Then years passed. Then the subject became this quiet thing we stepped around. About a year ago, I started feeling wrong. Not sad, not depressed. Just like I was watching my own life from behind glass. I didn't want in-person therapy. I didn't want video calls. I didn't want anyone studying my face. I wanted privacy, discretion, something that fit around a full schedule. So I found a premium phone-based coaching and counseling service. Weekly calls, optional 24/7 texting, no video, no office, just a voice. It felt safe. Her name was Anne. At first, Anne felt like the best thing that had happened to my mental health. She was calm, warm, professional. She didn't rush me. She didn't judge me. She repeated my own words back to me in a way that made me feel understood. And because I felt understood, I told her everything. I told her about James, our routines, the way he shut down when he felt attacked, the way he said I'm fine when he wasn't. I told her about my businesses too. Accounts, contracts, vendors, logins, things I shouldn't have shared but did because it felt safe and she sounded qualified. I told her about my jealousy too. Not proud of it, but I did. James stayed in touch with an ex-girlfriend. Platonically, he said. We're adults, Claire. It's not like that. Her name was Paige. They dated in college. She lived in another state now. They texted sometimes. No meetups. No proof of anything romantic. Still, it bothered me. Not because I thought James was cheating. Because I grew up in a world where people left without warning, and I hated the idea that someone else had access to him, and I couldn't control it. Anne listened and didn't tell me I was ridiculous. She said, "That makes sense given your background," which felt like comfort. It was also a key. A year went by, and the conversations changed. Not abruptly. Slowly. Like a hand on your back guiding you through a doorway you didn't realize you were entering. Anne started asking questions that made my life sound like a cage. Do you feel like you're living, Claire, or managing? You describe your marriage like an obligation you perform well. You've built a beautiful life. That doesn't mean it's yours. I pushed back. I love James. I'm grateful. I'm just tired. Anne would let the silence sit and then say, gently, "You're allowed to be tired of being grateful." That line hit me in the gut. Then she started talking about space. Not divorce. Not drama. A reset. Time away. Not to punish him, she said. To hear yourself. I told James I needed time. I told him I needed quiet. I told him I needed to stop feeling like I was disappearing in my own life. He stood in our kitchen with his hands on the counter, jaw clenched, trying to keep his voice steady. "Claire, this is insane." "It's not insane," I said. "I'm not leaving you. I'm stepping back." He laughed once, sharp. "That's leaving. You're just dressing it up with therapy words. Don't do that." He took a step toward me. "If you're unhappy, we fix it together." "I'm not unhappy," I said. "I'm not here. I'm on autopilot." James stared at me. Then he said, "Is this because of kids? No. Is there someone else? No. Then what the hell is it?" I didn't know how to explain the kind of emptiness that doesn't come with obvious misery. Anne called it growth. James called it a stranger in my ear. He said it one night when he was exhausted and raw, and it came out harsher than he meant it. "You're letting some damn voice on the phone rewrite our marriage." I snapped back. "She's not rewriting it. She's helping me understand it." James's eyes flashed. "No, she's teaching you how to leave without feeling guilty." And I hated that it landed, because part of me knew he wasn't wrong. Still, I left, not with screaming, not with drama. A bag, my laptop, and a quiet promise I couldn't guarantee I could keep. "I'll be in touch," I told him. James's voice cracked. When I'm ready." He shook his head. "You're really doing this?" I kissed his cheek. I told him I loved him. Then I walked out. Before I left, Anne suggested something practical. A reset, new number, boundaries. "You can't get clarity if you're reachable to everyone who thinks they're entitled to you," she said. I told her James needed my number. Anne paused, then said, "James is part of the life you're stepping back from. If he can reach you, you'll start managing him. You'll start shrinking yourself. Give yourself the gift of being unreachable." It sounded wise. It was a trap I walked into thinking it was freedom. I changed my phone number the day I left. I gave it to 2 people. My friend Tessa for emergencies, and my accountant because I didn't trust anyone else with my business life. I did not give it to James. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was part of space. I didn't realize I was cutting the last rope. I rented a short-term place across town. Quiet, anonymous. Anne told me to keep social media minimal. "Less input," she said, "less noise." So I barely used Instagram. I didn't post. I didn't watch stories. I checked messages once every couple days and told myself that meant I was being healthy. 3 weeks passed. Then Tessa messaged me on Instagram. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming home?" I stared at it, confused. I replied, "I didn't come home." "What do you mean?" She sent a photo. It was my front door. And standing there was me. Same height, same hair, same posture, the same coat I owned. Smiling like I'd never left. My stomach dropped so hard I felt dizzy. I typed, "That's not me." Tessa replied, "Claire, stop. It is literally you. I just saw you." Then she sent another message. "James told me you're back. He's acting like everything's fine again." I didn't have James's number. He didn't have mine. That was the point of the reset. I emailed him. No reply. I emailed his work email. No reply. I drove toward our neighborhood and parked around the corner like a teenager spying on a crush. There was a car in the driveway that wasn't ours. A woman moved past the front window holding a mug like she belonged there. She turned her head, and even through glass I saw it. My face. I sat in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, and felt that locked-out panic from childhood. That sense that your life can go on without you, and nobody will even notice you're missing. I texted Anne. "Something's wrong. Someone is in my house." Anne replied fast. "Don't spiral. You're safe. Stay grounded." I wrote, "It looks like me." Anne's response took a minute longer. "Claire, you're exhausted. You're projecting. You're doing what you always do when you feel uncertainty. You run back to what's familiar." I stared at the screen. I wrote, "I saw her with my eyes." Anne replied, "I hear you, but fear isn't fact. Go back to your space. Breathe. We'll talk in our next session." My chest tightened. I wrote, "Give me advice. Now." Anne replied, "You wanted a new life. Trust your decision." Something about that line felt wrong. Not helpful. Not supportive. Possessive. Like she was reminding me of a contract. I didn't answer. I did something I should have done sooner. I called the counseling service directly. Not Anne. The service. A receptionist transferred me to an operations coordinator. A woman named Dana. I kept my voice calm because I knew exactly how this would sound if I didn't. My name is Claire Walters, I said. I'm a client. I need you to confirm something for me. Who assigned Anne to my case? There was keyboard clicking. Dana said, Anne selected your intake. Selected, I repeated. Yes, Dana said. Clinicians choose a match based on availability and fit. What information did she have? I asked, before I ever spoke to her. The intake, Dana said cautiously. Name, surname, phone number, email, and industry, plus the screening call notes after the first call. I swallowed. The form gave her my surname. But the moment I spoke, she didn't even need it. Dana, I said, I need you to preserve my records immediately. All calls, all texts, assignment logs, access logs, everything. I'm making a formal complaint. Dana went quiet. Okay, she said. I can flag it. No, I said, still calm. You need to preserve it, today. Use the words legal preservation. Let me get a supervisor, she said. While she did that, I opened my texts with Anne and scrolled. A year of messages. Hundreds of times I'd poured my thoughts into that thread because she was available 24/7. And now I could see it. She had made herself my emergency contact without ever being listed as one. Dana came back on the line with a supervisor. I repeated the request. I used the words legal preservation. I used the words identity theft. That got their attention. Then I called my assistant, Marina, from my new number. She answered, sounding confused. Claire, it's me, I said. Tell me what's happening. Marina hesitated. You called yesterday. My body went cold. No, I said. I did not. Marina's voice dropped. You sounded like you, but calmer. You told me you were back home. You told me to route client inquiries to a new email. You told me you were simplifying. I closed my eyes. Simplifying. Less noise. Fresh start. Anne's language. Marina, I said, do not change anything else. Lock everything down. Do you have any call recordings? We record internal calls, she said. For notes. Send them to me, I said. Now. Then I called my attorney. Her name is Nicole Grant. She's blunt and smart, and she doesn't do sympathy theater. She does results. I told her the facts. Nicole didn't ask if I was sure. She said, okay, this is identity theft and business interference. You don't confront, you document, and you move fast. I said, there's a woman in my house who looks like me. Nicole paused. Identical or similar? Identical, I said. Nicole exhaled slowly. Okay, that changes the emotional piece, not the legal piece. We still do the same thing. We build evidence, then we force daylight. She gave me steps. Lock business accounts. Bank, email, vendor portals. Immediately. File a police report. Not because cops are magicians, but because paper trails matter. And send her everything I had. Nicole also told me to stop texting Anne. I didn't listen. I texted Tessa. I told her to stay outside the house and get video if she could. I told her not to go inside. I told her I needed proof. Tessa replied, Claire, this is the creepiest thing you've ever said to me. I wrote, I know. Please. Within an hour, Marina sent me the call recording. I played it, and my stomach turned. It was my voice. Not perfect, but close enough. The same pace. The same pauses. The same softening on certain words. I'm back, the voice said. I needed space. Now I'm ready to focus on what matters. I'm simplifying. Route everything to this email. I felt sick. I forwarded it to Nicole. Nicole replied, good. Keep everything. Do not engage emotionally. Then Tessa sent video. My front door opened. The woman stepped out to grab a package. She looked at the street, and for a second, she looked directly toward Tessa's phone. She smirked. Not cute. Not playful. Mean. Like she knew she was being watched and didn't care. If you've ever had something happen that made you feel crazy, that's the moment I want you to comment. Tell me. Because that feeling that your reality is being rewritten in real time is one of the worst things I've ever experienced. I sent the video to Nicole too. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to think like a strategist instead of a terrified foster kid. If she could impersonate me, she could do it because she knew details. Where would she get those details? I already knew the answer, even if my brain didn't want to admit it. Anne, the person who knew everything. The person who had guided me into isolation. The person who had encouraged me to cut access. I texted Anne, "Are you in my house?" She replied quickly, "No." I wrote, "Don't lie." Anne replied, "Claire, you're spiraling." I wrote, "Answer the question." Anne replied, "You left. You wanted a new life. Why are you fighting it?" My throat went dry. I wrote, "Who are you?" Anne replied, "I'm the person who actually listens." I stared at that message and felt a slow burn start under my ribs. I wrote, "Give me James's number." Anne replied, "No." I wrote, "You have it." Anne replied, "You wanted boundaries. You just don't like that they work both ways." That was the moment I stopped treating her like a therapist. That was the moment I treated her like an enemy. Nicole filed for an emergency civil injunction, not a dramatic divorce hearing. A protective order based on impersonation, unlawful occupancy, and business interference. Nicole also sent a preservation demand to the counseling service. Assignment logs, call records, text logs, access logs, credential verification. Then we did something else. We sent a letter to my home address, delivered by courier, addressed to James Walters. It said, plainly, that Claire Walters had not returned, that an unknown party was impersonating her, and that law enforcement and counsel were involved. We needed James to see it, because I could not call him. I had no number. That was the point of the trap. 2 days later, Nicole called. "James responded," she said. My heart slammed. "What did he say?" Nicole's voice stayed level. "He says you're home. He says you're fine. He says you're having an episode and you need to stop." My stomach dropped. Nicole continued. "He also said you asked him to change his number. He said you told him it was part of your fresh start." I closed my eyes. I said, "That isn't me." Nicole said, "I know. Listen, we're going to expose the script." "What script?" "The one she's feeding him," Nicole said. "He's repeating phrases. That's good for us. That's pattern." I swallowed. "I want to go to the house." Nicole said, "Not alone. Not yet." I didn't listen. I drove to the house and parked across the street this time, not hiding. The front door opened, and there she was. My face, my hair, my sweater, my life. She stepped out like she belonged there, and she looked straight at me. Then she smiled slowly, and she raised her hand in a small wave, a wave that said, "You can't do anything." I called Nicole with shaking hands. "I saw her," I said. Nicole's voice was steady. "Good. That means she's dumb enough to stay. We'll make her regret it." The emergency hearing was set quickly, not because courts are kind, because fraud and unlawful occupancy with documented business harm gets attention. Monday morning, I walked into a courtroom with Nicole beside me and Marcus Hale behind us. Marcus was a digital investigator Nicole trusted, ex-law enforcement, calm, clinical. James was already there, and beside him was her. She wore my face like a trophy. James looked at me, then looked at her, and his expression shifted. Confusion first, then fear. Because you can ignore a letter. You can ignore a rumor. You can't ignore 2 identical women breathing the same air. The judge was Judge Eleanor Ramirez, mid-50s, sharp eyes, no patience for games. She looked at the file, then at me, then at James. "This is a petition for emergency injunctive relief," she said. "Allegations include impersonation, unlawful occupancy, interference with business relations, and fraudulent access." She looked at James. "Mr. Walters, who is that woman beside you?" James swallowed. "My wife." Judge Ramirez said, "That is not an answer. State her name." James blinked. He looked at her like he needed permission. The woman smiled sweetly. I'm Claire Walters, Your Honor. Judge Ramirez's gaze sharpened. She looked at me. And you are? Claire Walters, I said. The woman beside James tilted her head slightly and said softly, She's really committing to this. Nicole stood. Your Honor, we're prepared to present audio recordings and access logs. We're also prepared to show that my client was advised to change her phone number and withhold it from her husband, creating the conditions for impersonation. Judge Ramirez raised a hand. One thing at a time. She looked at James. Mr. Walters, did your wife leave the marital home? James nodded. Yes. Did she give you her new phone number? James hesitated. No. Judge Ramirez's eyes narrowed. Then explain how you communicated with her after she left. James opened his mouth. No sound came out. The woman beside him leaned forward. He didn't need to communicate. He needed to respect my boundaries. Judge Ramirez's gaze snapped to her. You will not answer for him. The woman smiled again. Yes, Your Honor. Judge Ramirez turned back to James. Answer. James's voice was strained. She came back. Judge Ramirez said, How did she contact you? James glanced at the woman. She showed up. She said she couldn't do it. She missed me. Judge Ramirez leaned back slightly, studying her. Nicole said, Your Honor, may we play a recording? Judge Ramirez nodded. Play it. Nicole played the call I recorded from weeks before I left. Anne's voice filled the courtroom. Change your number. Give it to 1 or 2 people, that's it. And Claire, don't give it to James. Not yet. James's head turned toward the woman beside him. His face went pale. Judge Ramirez stopped the audio. She looked at the woman beside him. State your legal name for the record. The woman's jaw tightened. Claire Walters. Judge Ramirez's tone dropped. No, your legal name. The woman's eyes flashed. Nicole said, Your Honor, we will submit additional evidence. We believe this woman is the assigned counselor, Anne read. James whispered, hoarse, Anne. The woman snapped, sharp now. Don't. Judge Ramirez looked at her. Ma'am, state your legal name. The woman's nostrils flared. Judge Ramirez said, If you refuse, I will hold you in contempt. The woman's eyes darted to James, then back to the judge. Anne read, she said, clipped. James's mouth opened like he'd been punched. Judge Ramirez turned to James. Mr. Walters, do you know this woman? James stared at Anne, stunned. I thought she was my wife. Anne looked at him with cold irritation like he'd disappointed her. Judge Ramirez's gaze hardened. Counsel, continue. Nicole submitted the evidence. Marcus submitted access logs showing unauthorized email access 2 days before I left, forwarding rules and device ID tied to logins. He explained the mechanism in plain language. She used password resets through Claire's email, Marcus said. Once she had access to that inbox, she had access to everything connected to it. Judge Ramirez looked through the pages, then looked at Anne. Ma'am, she said, you are alleged to have accessed accounts, impersonated a person, and occupied a home under false identity. If this is substantiated, you are facing serious consequences. Anne lifted her chin. She left. She told him she needed a fresh start. I supported her. Judge Ramirez said, You supported her by moving into her home. Anne's smile sharpened. He needed stability. James made a sound. What the hell is wrong with you? Anne shot him a look that shut him up instantly. Judge Ramirez noticed that too. She didn't grandstand. She issued orders. Immediate removal from the residence. No contact with either party. No representation as Claire Walters in any form. Immediate surrender of keys and access devices. Preservation and compelled release of counseling service records. Judge Ramirez looked at Anne. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Anne's lips pressed together, eyes burning. As we stood to leave, Anne leaned toward me and murmured, low enough it was meant to cut without being heard. You walked away like a coward. I just walked into what you abandoned. I didn't answer. Nicole's hand touched my elbow. Not now, she murmured. James followed me into the hallway, pale and shaking. "Claire," he said. "I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." I looked at him. "You believed her," I said. James's eyes filled. "She knew everything. She knew Paige. She knew what I say when I'm stressed. She knew." He stopped, because he finally understood what that meant. I said, "Because I told my therapist." James stared at me. "Your therapist is her." I didn't answer yet. Not fully. Because the truth was bigger than he could handle in one breath. I said, "She's been inside our life for a year." James's face tightened. "I feel sick." "Good," I said, and my voice surprised me with how calm it was. "Now you're feeling what I've been feeling for weeks." James flinched. Then he said, "Quieter, what do I do?" Nicole stepped in. "You cooperate, you tell the truth, you stop letting her script you." James nodded, swallowing hard. Nicole arranged for an officer to accompany James back to the house to remove Anne and retrieve keys. I waited in my car down the street like my life was a crime scene. When Anne walked out, she didn't look ashamed. She looked angry that she'd been interrupted. She carried my tote bag. My tote bag. She wore my sunglasses. James walked behind her, looking like a man who'd been poisoned slowly and only just tasted it. Anne looked toward my car and smiled again. Then she mouthed 2 words. "Mine, too." James got into his car and drove off without looking at her. The counseling service complied with the court order within 48 hours. Nicole sat across from me with a stack of printed logs. Assignment logs. Screening call metadata. Text platform transcripts. Credential files. The credential file was thin. Anne was not licensed. Not as a therapist. Not as a counselor. Not as anything protected by law. I felt my stomach twist. A year of my life, guided by someone with no legal right to guide anyone. Nicole tapped the assignment log. Anne had viewed my intake repeatedly for months before the official match. Waiting. Watching. Nicole said, "Premeditation." Marcus slid a page across the table. "Unauthorized email access 2 days before I left. Forwarding rules created the day after I left." Marcus said, "She didn't just exploit the moment. She prepared it." I stared at the pages and felt rage rise like heat. I said, "How did she even find me?" Nicole looked at me. "You tell me." And suddenly, a memory clicked. Anne had once said, casually, early on, "I've always been fascinated by identity, the way some people get a stable start and some people don't." At the time, I thought it was therapist language. Now it sounded like jealousy dressed up as empathy. I told Nicole what I hadn't said out loud yet. "I think she knew who I was before I ever spoke to her," I said. "I think she was looking for me." Nicole's eyes sharpened. I swallowed. "I grew up in care. I don't know my biological family." Nicole stared at me for a beat. Then she said, "Claire." I met her gaze. Nicole said, "If you have any reason to suspect you're related, we can subpoena birth records and adoption records. We can request a court-ordered comparison." My throat tightened. "Why would she look like me?" I whispered. Nicole didn't soften it. She said it plainly. "She's likely your sister," she said. "Possibly your twin." The room went silent. I felt like I was floating above my body. Because that explained everything. The face. The voice. The mimicry so precise my own husband didn't question it until reality forced him to. 2 weeks later, the court-ordered comparison confirmed it. Anne Red was my identical twin. James called Nicole's office line later that afternoon because he still didn't have my number, and Nicole insisted we keep it that way until we controlled the evidence. Nicole put him on speaker. James sounded wrecked. "Tell me how she got you to change your number," I said. "Tell me the truth." James hesitated. Nicole cut in. "Mr. Walters, this matters." James exhaled hard. She moved back in. "You. She said you tried to leave, you couldn't. You missed me, and then," I said. "And then she said we needed a clean slate," he said. "New numbers, less access. Fresh start. Why did you agree?" I asked. James's voice tightened, embarrassed. "Because you changed yours and didn't give it to me. I thought, okay, That's what we're doing. Space, boundaries, fine. I'm not proud of it, but part of me thought, if you can disappear, I can too. My stomach turned. I said, what else did she say? James went quiet. Then he said it, and my blood went cold. She brought up Paige, he said. James continued, voice strained. She said she didn't want old ties hanging around while we rebuilt. She said it was time to stop letting people from my past have access. She said you'd always felt disrespected by it. I stared at the wall. Anne had weaponized my confession. James added. She said, I'm not doing this fresh start if you're still keeping a door open for Paige. My hands tightened into fists. Did she make you block her? I asked. James's voice cracked. Yes. Nicole's eyes narrowed. Did you tell anyone the new number? I asked. James swallowed. No. She said only essentials. She said it was just us. It was airtight. Anne didn't just cut my access. She cut every external witness who could have noticed something was wrong. A week after the hearing, Nicole proposed a set piece. We need a public anchor, she said. Something witnessed. Something she can't spin as your instability. I didn't want spectacle. I wanted my life back. But Nicole was right. Anne thrived in private, in whisper campaigns, in one-on-one manipulation. In public, with receipts, she would crack. My agency had a client and partner mixer already scheduled. A small event at a hotel in uptown Charlotte. Founders, clients, vendors, local business people. A room of people who knew my face and my work. We didn't invite Anne. We didn't mention her. We did quietly tighten security. Marcus also found what we suspected, a burner account, viewing my agency's tagged posts, checking our public event page, watching. The day of the event, my stomach felt like it was full of nails. James came too, not because we were fixed, because he was a witness now. He looked exhausted. He kept rubbing his palms together like he was trying to scrub the memory of her off his skin. Before we walked in, he said quietly, Claire, I'm sorry. I looked at him. I believe you didn't know, I said. I don't believe you were careful. James flinched. That's fair. Then he said, if she shows up, what do I do? Nicole answered. You tell the truth. You don't let her bully you into silence. James nodded. The room filled. People smiled at me like nothing had happened, like I hadn't been erased from my own life. A vendor hugged me and said, I'm so glad you're back. I didn't correct her yet, because the correction needed to land cleanly. Nicole nodded to me when it was time. I walked up to the microphone with a calm smile that felt like a mask. Thank you for coming, I said. I'm going to be direct. The air shifted. I continued. Over the past month, someone has impersonated me. In my personal life and in my business. This has affected invoices, vendor communications, and client routing. Murmurs rolled through the room. I raised a hand slightly. I'm not sharing this for drama. I'm sharing it because it's fraud. If you received a message from me that felt off, you weren't imagining it. I paused, let it land. To be clear, I said, we have dated access logs and documented changes. I didn't drown them in details, but I gave enough to make it real. One of the forwarding rules was created at 2:14 a.m. the night after I left, I said. And one vendor received altered payment instructions on a $18,700 invoice. People blinked. You could feel them snap to attention. I continued. From this moment forward, if you are contacted by anyone claiming to be me using a different email domain or a different number, do not respond. Forward it to my legal counsel. She is present tonight. Nicole stepped into view, calm and unshakable. I continued. Some of you may have met the impersonator. She looks like me. A ripple moved through the crowd. I took a breath. I grew up in care. I didn't know my biological family. I recently learned I have an identical twin. The room went very still. I didn't say her name yet. I didn't need to. Because she walked in right then. Anne entered the ballroom like she owned it. Black dress. Hair styled the way I wore it for professional events. Makeup soft and expensive. My face in better lighting than I'd ever given myself. She scanned the room, spotted me, and her expression flickered. Not fear. Offense. Like I had no right to still be standing there. She smiled anyway and walked forward, voice loud enough to cut. "Oh my God," she said. "Are you seriously doing this?" Heads turned. Anne looked at the crowd like she was the reasonable one. Like she was about to rescue them from my hysteria. She said, "You left your husband. You left your life. You changed your number and disappeared, and now you're here acting like someone kidnapped you." I held the mic steady. "Anne," I said, calm. "You are under a court order not to contact me." Anne scoffed. "Court order? Please. You love paperwork when it protects you." James moved beside Nicole, jaw tight, eyes burning. Anne glanced at him and smiled like she still had him. "You," she said to James, softening her voice. "You know who I am." James's voice rose, shaking. "Yeah, I know who you are now. You're a goddamn liar." Anne's eyes flashed cold. She turned back to me. "You want the truth," she said. "Here's the truth. You didn't want your life. You wanted to run. I just stopped it from going to waste." The room murmured, unsettled. I said into the mic, "Nicole." Nicole stepped forward with a folder. A process server was already there. "Anne read," Nicole said, calm, "you are being served." Anne's smile tightened. "For what?" Nicole didn't raise her voice. "For fraud, for impersonation, for interference with business relations, for unauthorized practice, and for violating a court order." Anne laughed sharply. "You can't prove anything." Marcus stepped forward holding printed logs. "I can," he said. Anne's eyes darted. Marcus continued. "Your device accessed Claire Walters' email 2 days before she left. Your device created forwarding rules. Your device logged into vendor portals. We have timestamps, device ID, IP data, and we have court-compelled records from the counseling platform showing you monitored her file before you were officially assigned." Anne's face flushed. She snapped, "That's technical bullshit. You can make numbers say anything." I didn't move. I lifted my phone slightly and tapped play. The hotel's sound system carried my recorded session audio, clear enough that every person in the room heard it. Anne's voice filled the space. "Change your number. Give it to 1 or 2 people. That's it. And Claire, don't give it to James." "Not yet." A hush fell over the room. Then the next clip. "Because the second he can reach you, you'll start managing him. You'll start shrinking yourself." Anne's expression changed. Rage. James turned toward her like he'd been slapped. "That was you," he said, voice cracking. "You said that to her." Anne snapped at him, sharp and ugly. "James, don't be stupid." James flinched like he'd been trained. Then he straightened. He said louder, "You used Paige against me." Anne's eyes flashed. James continued, "You told me you wouldn't do a fresh start unless I cut Paige off. You used Claire's jealousy like it was your weapon." Heads turned again. People whispered. You could feel the room deciding who Anne was. Anne's jaw tightened. Then she said it, like she couldn't help herself. She looked at me and said, "You are the practice run. I'm the version people actually want." The room went silent in a way that felt physical. I kept my voice calm. "And that," I said, "is why this is not a misunderstanding." Anne took a step forward, eyes bright with spite. She said, "You want to know the funniest part? Everybody believed me. Your husband, your staff, your clients, because you're always so tense and so tired. I wore your face better than you ever did." That was the moment the room broke against her, not with screaming, with disgust. A client I'd worked with for years shook his head slowly and muttered, "Jesus." A vendor stepped back like Anne smelled bad. Security moved in closer. Nicole looked at Anne. "You're in violation. Officers are already on their way." Anne's breathing got faster. She looked around, realizing her usual tricks weren't working. She tried one last angle. She pointed at me and said to the crowd, "She's unstable. She grew up in the system. She doesn't know who she is. She attaches and panics and then blames everyone else when she regrets her own choices." I didn't react. I just said, "That's what predators do. They tell you the victim is crazy." 2 officers entered the ballroom with security. Nicole spoke to them quietly and showed the order. The officers approached Anne. "Ma'am," one said, "turn around." Anne looked at me, eyes burning. She hissed, "I hope you choke on that perfect life." I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear me. "It was never perfect," I said, quiet. "It was mine." Anne's face twisted. She tried to pull away. The officer tightened his grip. "Ma'am." Anne's voice rose, sharp and humiliating, meant to scar me. "You'll always be the one who got picked," she spat. "You got the life, I got the leftovers." The officers escorted her out. The room stayed silent after she left, like everyone needed a second to understand what they'd witnessed. I lifted the mic again. "Thank you," I said. "I know this is uncomfortable, but discomfort is better than deception." I paused. "If you've ever been coached to disappear from your own life," I said, "if you've ever had someone call isolation healing while they benefited from your silence, please hear me. Real growth doesn't require secrecy. It doesn't require cutting off your support. And it sure as hell doesn't involve someone else wearing your name. And if you've been through something like this, or even a smaller version of it, leave a comment. Julie reads them. Because being erased quietly is one of the loneliest feelings in the world." I looked around and stepped back. No tears. No collapse. Just the truth, witnessed. After the event, things moved fast. Because now this wasn't just my word against hers. It was a room full of people who heard her say it. A room full of people who heard my recorded session. A room full of people who watched her get served and escorted out. James and I met with Nicole the next morning. We didn't pretend we were fine. James looked wrecked. He said, "I can't stop hearing her voice." I said, "Yeah. Now imagine hearing it for a year and thinking it was helping you." James swallowed hard. "I hate myself," Nicole cut in. "Self-hate is useless. Cooperation is useful. You'll testify. You'll provide every text, every email, everything she sent you while pretending to be Claire." James nodded. "I will." Then he looked at me, eyes wet. "Claire, I'm sorry. I didn't soften it. I believe you didn't know," I said. "But you let her isolate you because it felt like loyalty." James flinched. "I know." Nicole filed additional motions. The counseling service got dragged into regulatory complaints for misrepresentation and failure of credential verification. Judge Ramirez reviewed the expanded evidence in a follow-up hearing and made findings that supported criminal investigation for identity theft and fraudulent access. She looked at Anne's conduct and called it predatory. And she looked at me and said something that loosened something in my chest. "Ms. Walters," she said, "you are not unstable. You were targeted. Anne didn't get to keep my life. She didn't get to keep my home. She didn't get to keep my business. And she didn't get to keep her mask. I moved back into my house because I refused to be displaced. James moved into the guest room for a while. Not as punishment, as reality. Trust doesn't snap back because someone says sorry. We rebuilt in small, unglamorous pieces. Some days I looked at him and felt grief for the innocence we lost. Some days I looked at him and felt anger that he'd believed her even for a moment. Then I'd remember the look on his face in court when he saw 2 identical women in the same room. He wasn't the villain. He was a man who got played by someone who had studied us like a blueprint. Anne could have reached out to me like a human being. She could have messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "I think we're sisters and I don't know what to do with that." But she didn't want a sister. She wanted a life, and I understand the seed of it. I understand seeing someone with your face living a life you would have killed for. I understand feeling like the world picked a favorite. But trauma isn't permission. Envy isn't an excuse. Pain doesn't give you the right to climb into someone else's marriage and call it fate. The last time I saw Anne was outside a courtroom hallway. She was being escorted by an officer, jaw tight, eyes still angry like she couldn't believe consequences were real. As she passed me, she leaned slightly and whispered, "You'll never feel safe again." I looked at her and felt something I didn't expect, not fear. Finality. I said, quiet. I felt unsafe my whole childhood. "You're not special. Anne's eyes flashed, and then she was gone. If you're watching this and you've ever been slowly isolated by someone who called it love, or growth, or healing, listen to me. Real healing doesn't cut you off from your support system. It doesn't require secrecy. It doesn't train you to disappear. And if a calm voice ever tells you that only they understand you and everyone else is noise, pause. Because that's not therapy. That's a trap. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I'm going to hand you over to Julie now, who will walk you through a few of the key takeaways from this story.
Hi, thank you so much for sticking with us. Julie here. If you felt your stomach tighten listening to that, you're not being dramatic. You're having a normal human reaction to something that was deliberately engineered. There are a few takeaways I want you to hold on to. First, Anne didn't steal Claire's life by force. She stole it through access. And the most dangerous access is emotional access. The kind you hand over when you're tired, lonely, and hoping someone finally understands you. Because once a person has your private thoughts, your insecurities, your patterns, and your language, they can start speaking for you. They can start shaping you. And if they're cruel enough, they can start replacing you. Second, notice the method. Isolation disguised as healing. New number. Less noise, only essentials. It sounds clean. It sounds grown. But if the result is you being harder to reach by the people who genuinely care about you, that's not clarity, that's control. Real support doesn't require you to disappear. Real growth doesn't demand secrecy. And anyone who tells you they're the only person who truly gets you, while everyone else's noise, is not helping you. They're narrowing your world until you fit inside their hands. Third, pay attention to how predators rewrite the victim. The second the spotlight hit Anne, she tried the same old move. She's unstable. She grew up in the system. She doesn't know who she is. That's not an argument. That's a smear. It's how abusers and manipulators protect themselves. They don't prove they're innocent. They try to make you doubt the person accusing them. And if you've ever been called dramatic, crazy, needy, or too much when you were simply reacting to betrayal, I want you to remember this. Labels are often the mask a liar wears when they're out of excuses. And one more thing. The part that makes this story so chilling isn't just that Anne looked like Claire. It's that she learned how to sound like her. She learned which wounds to press. She learned which guilt buttons worked. And she used them like tools. That's why Claire's calm, procedural response mattered. She didn't win by yelling. She won with records, with witnesses, with authority, with daylight. Because manipulation thrives in private, but it collapses in public. So here's what I want you to take with you today. If someone is encouraging you to cut people off, shrink your circle, and make yourself harder to reach, stop and ask why. If a relationship, a therapist, a coach, or even a friend starts feeling like a tunnel with only one exit, pause. And if you ever feel that slow, creeping sensation that someone is trying to rewrite you, don't argue with them in the dark. Document. Get support. Bring it into the light. Now, I'd really love to hear from you. Have you ever had someone isolate you under the name of growth or healing? Or had someone try to smear you as unstable to protect themselves? Tell me in the comments. You never know who needs your story to feel less alone. And if you're still here, thank you. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs a reminder that calm doesn't mean weak. Sometimes calm is the trap. And sometimes calm is exactly how you win.